West Virginia covers 24,000 square miles of mountain, hollow, and river gorge, and most people drive straight through it on their way to somewhere else. That is a mistake, because buried in those mountains are ghost towns where rivers of burning oil ran through the streets at 4 in the morning. A logging town so remote that in 50 years of existence, no one ever built a road to reach it. An abandoned amusement park where construction crews dug into the soil and found the skeletons of children. A coal town of 5 people that still has a functioning Amtrak station and once hosted a poker game that ran continuously for 14 years. And then there is a number 1, a tunnel where an estimated 764 men were sent to die by a company that knew exactly what was killing them, wore respirators when they visited, and gave the workers nothing. That one is going to stay with you. These are 13 ghost towns in West Virginia that time completely forgot. Number 13, Volcano. The town that burned in a river of its own oil. The name was not a metaphor. Gas flares from dozens of oil wells lit the West Virginia hillside so intensely at night that the whole landscape glowed like a volcanic eruption. The Volcanic Oil and Gas Company formed in 1864, purchased 2,000 acres, and built a boomtown that at its peak had homes, schools, hotels, an opera house, and 2 newspapers, the Volcano Lubricator and the West Virginia Walking Beam. The oil was so close to the surface that locals collected it by laying wool blankets on puddles and wringing them out into barrels. Then, on August 4, 1879, at 4 in the morning, a fire broke out just after the watchman retired. The wooden oil tanks burst. According to the New York Times, burning petroleum ran through the streets, setting fire to everything on either side. The Pinkerton Detective Agency investigated. A man was arrested. He was acquitted. The town was never rebuilt. Today, rusted oil barrels and the foundation of a mansion built in the shape of a Maltese cross are all that remain inside Mountwood Park. A town named for fire got exactly that. Number 12, Spruce. The town too cold for roads. At 3,853 feet elevation, Spruce earned the title highest and coldest town east of the Mississippi. Residents reported frost in summer. The West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company built it in 1902 as a satellite of their lumber operation in Cass, and at its peak about 300 people lived there, in a 30-room hotel with electric lights, hot running water, and steam heat. All of that on top of a mountain with no road, not a gravel path, not a wagon trail, nothing. In 50 years of existence, the only way in or out of Spruce was by train. By 1920, West Virginia was roughly 90% deforested. The trees were gone. The mill closed in 1925. Western Maryland Railroad briefly kept Spruce alive as a locomotive repair shop, but when diesel engines replaced steam in the 1950s, the railroad did not just abandon the town. They burned every standing structure to the ground. Today you can ride the Cass Scenic Railroad to where Spruce used to be. What you will find is concrete foundations, scattered pipe, and silence. Number 11, Stotsbury, where a senator was born and a church slowly died. Robert C. Byrd, the longest-serving senator in United States history at the time of his death, grew up here. Stotsbury was a coal camp in Raleigh County, named for the president of Beaver Coal Company. It had company houses, company stores, and churches split by race. Black miners and white miners prayed in separate buildings. The mine changed hands 4 times across 90 years. Koppers Coal ran it until 1958. Eastern Associated rebuilt it in the 1960s. White Mountain LLC reopened it in 2001 and went bankrupt by 2002. In the winter of 1958, Life magazine photographer Paul Schutzer came to Stotsbury and documented the town dying. Teenagers on empty streets, boarded up houses, a community dissolving frame by frame. St. John's Baptist Church was later listed as an endangered building by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Then a storm caved in the roof. By the time anyone thought to save it, only the foundation stones remained. The senator became one of the most powerful men in Washington. The town that raised him could not keep a church standing. Number 10, Keystone and Cinder Bottom. Appalachia's Sodom and Gomorrah, a 1912 pamphlet called Keystone, the Sodom and Gomorrah of Today. That was the actual title. Keystone was founded in 1892 in McDowell County as an independent municipality, not a company town, serving the surrounding coal camps. Its red light district, Cinder Bottom, ran along Elkhorn Creek and was infamous for brothels, saloons, and gambling. Interracial relationships were common there at a time when that was deeply taboo almost everywhere else. Here is the detail that makes this story different from a simple vice tale. The coal companies allowed it. They deliberately tolerated Cinder Bottom because it kept their workforce from leaving. A red light district as a labor retention strategy. But Keystone was also home to the state's first black mayor, the nation's first black woman legislator, Minnie Buckingham Harper, and the McDowell Times, the state's leading minority newspaper. The population peaked at 2,500 in 1950. By 2020, it was 176. Floods wiped out most of the business district. Today, Keystone is one of the few majority black municipalities in West Virginia, holding on at 65%. A few storefronts survive. The contradictions remain. Number 9. Sewell. 50 ovens and no one left to tend them. Deep in the New River Gorge, more than 50 beehive coke ovens still stand in rows in the forest. They look like the ruins of some ancient civilization. Dome-shaped stone structures lined up in formation, slowly being swallowed by rhododendron and hardwood. They are not ancient. They were built starting in 1874. Sewell was a coal town that specialized in baking raw coal into coke, the purified carbon fuel used to smelt iron in blast furnaces. Each oven was loaded with coal, sealed and slow-burned for days. When cheaper coke from more accessible coal fields undercut the New River operations, Sewell's reason for existing evaporated. One by one, residents left. The last holdout departed in 1973. You can still visit, but you will need directions from the rangers at Babcock State Park and possibly a four-wheel drive vehicle. What you find when you get there are the ovens still standing, still in rows, still waiting for coal that stopped coming half a century ago. Number 8. Cass. The company town that woke up in the Twilight Zone. Fodor's once described visiting Cass as the beginning of an episode of the Twilight Zone. That is not hyperbole. The streets are intact. The company store is open. The workers' houses have been painted and furnished. No kids play outside. No dogs bark. No cars sit in driveways. Cass was built in 1901 by the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Company, and at its peak, more than 2,000 people lived here around what was then the largest double-band sawmill in the world, processing an estimated 1.25 billion board feet of lumber over its lifetime. The mill shut down in 1960. A scrap dealer started ripping up the railroad tracks at a mile per day. Then a Pennsylvania rail fan named Russell Baum showed up and launched a campaign to save the town. The state bought the railroad in 1961 and eventually purchased the entire town, Masonic Lodge, barber shop, jail, workers' houses, and froze everything in its early 1900s state. Today, Cass is home to the world's largest collection of operating Shea locomotives. Your cell phone will not work here. The town sits within the National Radio Quiet Zone, where electromagnetic signals are banned to protect the Green Bank Observatory. GPS fails. Calls drop. And the steam whistles still blow on schedule, as they have for over a century. Number 7. Lake Shawnee. The playground built on a mass grave. In 1926, a man named Conley T. Sneedo built an amusement park near Princeton, West Virginia. Ferris wheel, swing set, swimming pool. Families from the surrounding coal towns came out on weekends. Then children started dying. A girl was killed when a truck backed into the path of the rotating swing ride. A boy drowned in the pool. The park's owner later claimed at least 6 deaths from the rides. The park closed in 1966. But the land's history did not begin with Sneedo. For over 1,000 years, Native Americans had used this ground as a burial site. In 1783, Shawnee killed and scalped 2 children from the Mitchell Clay family, the first white settlers in the county. A 3rd child was captured and burned at the stake. Clay tracked down and killed several members of the raiding party. More than a century of silence followed. Then someone built a playground on it. In the 1980s, a developer named Gaylord White bought the land to build houses. When crews broke ground, they hit bones. The skeletons were overwhelmingly those of children. the White family abandoned the development and left the park as it was. The Ferris wheel still stands, overgrown with vines. The swing set still hangs. Visitors leave offerings at the burial ground. The Travel Channel ranked it one of the most terrifying places in America. It earned the title. Number 6. Colewood, the ghost town that launched a rocket boy to NASA. On October 4, 1957, a 14-year-old son of a mine superintendent watched Sputnik cross the sky over McDowell County and decided he was not going to spend his life underground. Homer Hickam and 5 friends formed the Big Creek Missile Agency and started building rockets on a barren slag dump they renamed Cape Colewood. Their first attempt, a flashlight tube packed with cherry bomb powder, destroyed his mother's fence. They kept going. Hickam published his memoir, Rocket Boys, in 1998. Universal Studios turned it into October Sky in 1999. The town briefly became famous, but Colewood had been dying long before the cameras arrived. If you're enjoying this so far, hit that thumbs up. We are about to get into the entries that will not let you go. The mine closed in 1986. The October Sky Festival, which ran annually, held its 13th and final event in 2011. Today, much of Colewood sits abandoned, including Big Creek High School. Hickam's boyhood home still stands. Cape Colewood is overgrown. The movie could not even be filmed in the real Colewood. No airport, no rental cars, no hotels, so they built a replica in Tennessee. The town that produced a NASA engineer was too forgotten for the film crew to reach. The rockets flew out of that valley. Nobody else did. Number 5. Kmore. 821 steps down to the underworld. The National Park Service built a wooden staircase, 821 steps, straight down into the New River Gorge. Fayetteville locals use it as an extreme workout. At the bottom, they find a ghost town. Kmore was opened in 1899 by the Lowmore Iron Company and built on 2 levels. Kmore top on the gorge rim and Kmore bottom by the river, connected by a steam-powered incline railway. At its peak in 1923, 560 people lived there. The mine produced 16,904,321 tons of coal before closing in 1962. Workers were paid partly in scrip, more than a third of their wages redeemable only at the company store. The workforce was diverse: African American migrants, European immigrants. The schools were segregated. Yet former residents recalled genuine camaraderie across racial lines, even inside a system designed to keep them apart. In 1960, fire destroyed much of Kmore Bottom. The mine shut down 2 years later. Everything was left in place: the tipple, the powder house, the 101 coke ovens, and the safety boards, still hanging, still posting warnings and tracking incidents for miners who have been gone for more than 60 years. Those boards are the detail that gets you, not the machines, not the ruins. The handwritten record of daily danger, frozen on a wall inside a forest, addressed to no one. Number 4. Nuttleberg. Henry Ford's secret coal empire in the gorge. Henry Ford wanted to control everything. His own coal to feed his own steel mills to build his own cars. In 1920, he acquired the mining rights at Nuttleberg through his Fordson Coal Company, a town that an English immigrant named John Nuttall had founded in 1870 after buying land for $1 an acre. Nuttall had bet that the C&O Railway would come through the New River Gorge, and he was right. His mine was operational before the railroad was finished. He made almost instant profits. Ford modernized the operation and built a 1,385-foot conveyor system down the mountainside, the world's largest incline tipple, in 1923. Production peaked at 240,820 tons in 1925. But Ford could not control the C&O Railway. Regulatory bodies blocked his ambitions. By 1928, he sold and walked away. The town limped on until 1958. At its peak, Nuttleberg had nearly 100 houses, churches, schools, and 80 coke ovens. 40 of those ovens still stand today. In 1998, the Nuttall family transferred the site to the National Park Service. Here is the part that rewires your sense of remoteness. A Nuttleberg resident could catch the train and be in Chicago in less than a day. Daily copies of the New York Times arrived by rail. Fresh seafood came up from Norfolk, and yet the only way in today is a one-lane road so narrow it can barely fit a car. The gorge swallowed the connection but kept the ruins. Number 3. Gad, the town they drowned. Gad, West Virginia was established in 1889 along McKees Creek in Nicholas County. It had a sawmill, a church, a school, a general store, and a post office. The name came from the Gad family. For 77 years, it was an ordinary farming community. Then the Army Corps of Engineers arrived. The 1938 Flood Control Act had authorized dam construction across Appalachia. The Corps bought every property in Gad. They dug up 6 family cemeteries and relocated the dead. They built a dam, 390 feet high, 2,280 feet long, $48 million, and on September 3, 1966, the water rose. Gad ceased to exist above the surface. The nearby town of Sparks went under with it. Today, Summersville Lake sits on top of both, nearly 3,000 acres of clear water that tourists call the Little Bahamas of the East. Scuba divers call what is underneath it the Appalachian Atlantis. The water clarity exceeds 20 feet. You can see foundations, road remnants, the outlines of a community. And roughly every decade, when engineers need to inspect the dam, they drain the lake low enough that Gad briefly reappears. Roads that go nowhere. Foundations that hold nothing. Carved names in rocks. Visitors during these drawdowns have found children's marbles lying in the mud. Small, round, ordinary objects from an afternoon that ended 60 years ago. Then the water rises and buries everything again. Gad is the only ghost town on this list that the government created on purpose. They did the math. The dam has prevented an estimated $407 million in flood damage. The math does not mention what the water took. Number 2. Thurmond. 5 people and the world's longest poker game. Captain William D. Thurmond was a Confederate veteran and a teetotaler. He founded the town in the 1880s on his land along the New River, and he banned alcohol from every inch of it. His neighbor, Thomas McKell, had different plans. McKell built the Dunglen Hotel just across the property line and turned it into a palace of gambling, drinking, and mischief. The rivalry between the two men became local legend. The Dunglen's signature attraction was a poker game that ran continuously for 14 years, players rotating in and out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Ripley's Believe It or Not recognized it as the longest poker game in world history. Meanwhile, Captain Thurmond's side of town became a serious railroad hub. At its peak, 15 passenger trains came through daily, carrying 75,000 travelers a year. The town generated $4.8 million in freight revenue in 1910. The commercial buildings had no main street. They fronted directly onto the railroad tracks. Then the automobile came. Fires devastated the commercial district. The National Bank of Thurmond closed in 1931. By 1980, the population was 67. By 2010, it was 5. Thurmond is now the least populous incorporated municipality in West Virginia. The National Park Service owns about 80% of the town. The restored depot operates as a visitor center and, remarkably, an active Amtrak station. The Cardinal route stops 3 times a week. John Sayles filmed his 1987 movie Mate One there because the town still looked like a 1920s coal town. It still does. To get there, you drive 7 miles down a narrow, winding, one-lane road running alongside active railroad tracks. When you arrive, you find over 20 original buildings, freight trains still rumbling through, and approximately 4 or 5 people who call this place home. When the last of them leaves, the whole town becomes the National Park Services. The poker game ended decades ago. Thurmond is still playing out its hand. Number 1. Hawk's Nest. America's Forgotten Graveyard. There is a scenic overlook at Hawk's Nest State Park in Fayette County. Tourists pull over, walk a short path, and look down at a gorge where the New River cuts through the mountains. Far below, a tunnel gate is visible in the rock face. Water rushes through it. It is operational. It has been operational since 1932. There is a historical marker nearby. Most people read it, nod, and drive on. A few miles away, Off US Route 19, a gravel drive leads to a quiet field near Summersville Lake. A memorial stands in the grass. It was dedicated on September 7, 2012. Beneath the field, in unmarked rows, lie the remains of men who were buried here because there were no cemeteries in the area that would accept black bodies. In 1930, Union Carbide's contractor began drilling a 3-mile tunnel through Gauley Mountain to divert water from the New River for a hydroelectric plant. Approximately 3,000 men were recruited for the work. 3/4 were African American, many of them Southerners fleeing the Depression for a few dollars a day. The mountain was made of sandstone, 90 to 97% pure silica. The company knew. When they discovered the silica, they expanded the tunnel from 36 to 42 feet in diameter to extract more of the valuable mineral. Company engineers wore respirators when they inspected the site. The workers were given nothing. The drilling kicked up dust so thick that men could barely see. They emerged from the tunnel coated in white powder. The people of Gauley Bridge gave them a name, the Living Dead. Silicosis killed some within months. Black workers were paid in scrip while white workers received cash. Camps were segregated. Black men were assigned the most dangerous tasks. When a worker got too sick to dig, armed deputies ran him out of town. When a worker died, the company listed the cause as pneumonia or tuberculosis. Black miners were buried in unmarked rows on Martha White's farm near Summersville. Death toll estimates range from 109, the company's own admission, to 476, the figure from congressional hearings, to 764, the number inscribed on the memorial. Some scholars put it above 1,000. The true number is unknowable. The company made sure of that. For decades, the graves lay forgotten. Families of the dead never learned what happened. In 2019, NPR located a living relative of one of the victims, Sheila Flack Jones, niece of a young worker named Dewey Flack. She told them she was heartbroken that her family had spent their lives thinking he had simply run away. The tunnel still diverts water for hydroelectric power today. The memorial was not built until 2012, more than 80 years after the first men walked into that mountain. The disaster led to the recognition of silicosis as an occupational disease and helped prompt worker safety legislation that protects people to this day. That is the legacy. Laws written in the lungs of men whose names we will never know. West Virginia is full of places that most maps have given up on. Coal towns, lumber towns, oil towns, drowned towns, each one a life that somebody built and somebody left behind. For me, it is Gad. Children's marbles in the mud of a drained lake from an afternoon that ended when the water rose. That is the image I cannot shake. Which of these places surprised you most? Which one did we miss? Drop it in the comments, and if this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, subscribe. We will be back.